Edinburgh versus London, a cost of living comparison. In one of our videos about cities comparison, we discuss London versus Edinburgh. It's a down-to-earth, in-depth comparison judging from its cyber reception and accolades. Please search for the video and watch it to see what we're talking about here, and don't forget to let us into your thoughts. In the thoroughness that we are known for, we have something to give more attention to about the comparison of the two cities. We don't have enough time in that video to discuss extensively the cost of living. We just glossed over it, albeit not without a promise to tell you more. Here we are to fulfill our pledge. We hereby present the video Edinburgh versus London, a cost of living comparison. Food. As far as food is concerned, London is just about 2% more expensive than Edinburgh. Of course, it could be argued that the prices for groceries are just about the same in both cities, but there are differences in the packaging and fancifulness. You could see more fancy shops in London than in Edinburgh, and this attracts more costs. Similarly, there are more spots if your choice is eating out, as well as in the restaurants. By and large, on average, the cost of food for mid-range restaurants and change is not too difficult in the two cities. While you have a basic lunchtime menu, including a drink for £14 in the business district in London, you need an additional £1 in a similar area of Edinburgh to enjoy the same thing. So you have to incur an additional 8% cost on this in Edinburgh. For a combo meal in a fast food restaurant in London, you will normally spend £7, while you'll spend 8% less in Edinburgh, where it costs £6. For a pound of boneless chicken breast in London, you'll pay £3.37 on average, while you'll pay 16% at £2.91 in Edinburgh. 12 large eggs cost £3.53 in London, while they cost £2.86 in Edinburgh. However, items like bread, whole fat milk, apples and potatoes cost a bit more in Edinburgh. Housing. The next thing anyone would need wherever he lives is accommodation. So let's look into the cost of housing in the two cities. Housing in London is about 55% more expensive in London than in Edinburgh. Now to the examples. Monthly rent for 900 square foot furnished accommodation in London's expensive area costs £3,013, while it costs £1,857 in Edinburgh. That's a difference of about 62%. In a less expensive area, this same accommodation costs £2,010 in London and £1,171 in Edinburgh, a whole 72% difference. As for utilities such as heating, electricity and gas, among others, for two people in a 900 square foot accommodation, you need an average of £211 in London, while it's 25% less expensive in Edinburgh, where it costs £169. Monthly rent for a 480 square foot studio in a classic area of London costs £1,832, while the same kind of accommodation in the same type of place in Edinburgh costs £984, making it about 86% cheaper. The same kind of accommodation in a normal area of London costs £1,299 and is 74% more expensive than in Edinburgh, where it costs £745. Utilities for this kind of accommodation costs about 50% more in London, where you have to pay on average £145, while you pay £97. Nevertheless, internet of 8 megabits per second for a month and a 40-inch flat-screen TV cost less in London than in Edinburgh. Clothes. Generally, you spend about 7% more on clothes in London than in Edinburgh. If you are buying a pair of jeans, say Levi's 501 or a similar brand, you'll pay 3% more in London than you pay in Edinburgh. It costs £66 and £63 respectively. Also, a pair of sports shoes such as Nike, Adidas or equivalent brands cost 22% more in London than in Edinburgh. While you pay £67 in Edinburgh, you'll pay £82 in London. If it's a pair of men's leather business shoes, you'll pay 33% more in London. In London, this is sold for £91, while it's £68 in Edinburgh. Interestingly, summer dresses cost the same thing on average in high street stores like Zara and H&M in both cities. It's about £36 in both cities. Transportation. Transportation or travel is one of the biggest costs of living in London and Edinburgh. It's crazy in London as workers have to face insane traffic and obscene parking charges. That's why, for many, public transport is the way. After weighing factors, transportation is found to be 88% more expensive in London than in Edinburgh. Monthly tickets on public transport as a whole cost £151 in London, while it's £60 in Edinburgh. That is a huge difference of some 150%. A taxi trip on a business day for a trip of 5 miles on a basic tariff costs 27% more in London. While you pay £16 in Edinburgh, it's £20 in London. What if you are thinking about owning your personal car? Funnily enough, cars like the Volkswagen Golf 1.4 TSI 150 CV or its equivalent without extras cost about 2% less in London. Gas costs about the same thing in both cities. Personal care. This includes items needed for health, first aid and miscellaneous body upkeeps. In totality, the cost of this is about the same in both cities. Let's start with items that cost less in London. Cold medicine or analgesics are a good example. Tylenol, Frenadol, Coldrex or similar brands needed for 6 days costs an average of £4.07 in London, while it costs about 10% more in Edinburgh, where you will pay about £4.50. A short visit, say about 15 minutes, to a doctor costs 7% less in London than it costs in Edinburgh. While you are expected to pay £84 in Edinburgh, you will pay about £78 in London. Tampons and toilet paper cost less in London. Tampons are 8% less in London. A box containing 32 tampons is sold for £2.82 in London, while it's sold for £3.07 in Edinburgh. 4 rolls of toilet paper costs 11% less in London at £2.13, while it's sold for £2.39 in Edinburgh. Other personal care items are more expensive in London. For example, a box of antibiotics containing 12 doses costs £10 in London and £9 in Edinburgh, about an 18% difference. A 2-in-1 hair shampoo of about 12 ounces costs 15% more in London, where you'll buy it at £4.42 as opposed to £3.84 in Edinburgh. And a tube of toothpaste costs £1.72 in London, while it costs 19% less in Edinburgh at a rate of 1.44%. Entertainment. Finally, let us go to a cost item considered a luxury. Entertainment in London is 28% more expensive than in Edinburgh. Everything considered entertainment submitted by users of a cost of living calculator costs more in London. If you are a cinema lover, 2 tickets to a movie cost 42% more in London, where you will pay £26 compared to £18 in Edinburgh. 2 tickets to the theatre for the best available seats will cost 64% more in London. In Edinburgh, it costs £119, while you will pay about £195 in London. For a basic dinner out for 2 in a neighbourhood pub, you would spend 7% more in London than you would in Edinburgh. In London, it costs £43, while it costs £40 in Edinburgh. If you want a dinner for 2 in the expat area and you want to include appetizers, a main course, wine and dessert, you should be prepared to pay 33% more in London. While this luxury costs about £61 in Edinburgh, it costs £80 in London. For a cocktail drink in a downtown club, you'll pay some 52% more in London. While this costs about £8 in Edinburgh, it costs £13 in London. To have a cappuccino in expat areas costs 17% more in London. You will pay £3.14 in Edinburgh, while you pay £3.68 in London. To take 500 millilitres of beer in a neighbourhood pub costs 14% more in London. While you pay £5.09 in Edinburgh, you will pay £5.79 in London. For a month of gym membership in a business district, it's about £52 in London and £32 in Edinburgh, which is a 60% difference. Conclusively, the cost of living in London is way higher. This is simply consistent with the population, job opportunities and wages. Please let us know what you think about all that. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.